Hi there! Welcome to Pallet University. About a week ago, Birdkeeper Toby made this video, roughly saying, if I could make Gen 8, what would it look like? And I thought that was a fantastic idea, and as soon as I saw the video, I was like, I really want to do that. So that's what we're doing today. And, you know, I figure with most likely, small grain of salt here, with most likely Gen 8 being announced probably tomorrow, just based on a lot of evidence, mostly the, daily, minute-long videos about each region that Pokemon has been putting up for the last week, with today being the Gen 7 one, and tomorrow being Pokemon Day. I think everybody's expecting Gen 8 to be announced tomorrow. So with that, it's not predictions, it's just, if I could make Gen 8, what would it look like? So in his video, Birdkeeper Toby outlined 8 points of just, talking points, discussion points about his game. And a lot of this I actually took from a fan game that I was working on for a long time. I worked on it for probably around a year and a half, got around the second badge, and then it just, life got busy. So a lot of this is taken from that game. Because I did actually, making fan games is actually so much fun. You get to learn a little bit of coding, you get to learn stuff like story development, and for a while I even was working on a team creating a large-scale, fan game. And unfortunately, just once again, life got busy, so I had to sort of drop out of it. But the world-building aspect is the part that I loved the most, so now I get to share it all with you guys. So first up on the list is, what would these games be called and why? So my games will be called Pokemon Calcite, and then either Pokemon Aragonite or Pokemon Dolomite. So if you did not know, Calcite, Aragonite, and Dolomite are all sedimentary minerals, and if you also did not know, I'm a geologist, that's kind of what I do. But the reason I chose these three specifically are that they're sedimentary minerals that are very commonly seen in the world of paleontology, which is the part of geology that I specialize in. With things like calcite making up things like clam shells, snail shells, basically any kind of hard fossil you can think of that isn't bones is made out of calcite. However, sometimes it doesn't always start out that way. A lot of things like snails, gastropods, and in general mollusks, so anything that's like a squid, an ammonite, a belemnite, anything that's a mollusk, it doesn't start out as calcite. Instead, it starts out as another mineral called aragonite, which has the exact same formula. It's just, chemically structured a little bit differently, but it makes it very shiny. If you've heard of the term mother of pearl, that is aragonite. It's a kind of white, really lustrous mineral, at least in the form that it comes in with things like shells. And the reason that I kind of hesitate with aragonite is A, that it's a little bit long, compared to, I think almost all of them have just been either 1 or 2 syllables for past Pokemon games, and aragonite is just a little bit long. Plus it also sounds a little bit too much like dragonite, in my opinion. So dolomite is another mineral that's very similar to calcite in that it's the same formula with a little bit of magnesium thrown in there. But it's also a very common sedimentary mineral. As for why they're named after sedimentary minerals, well, we'll have to wait for a little bit in this video to talk about that. So the next kind of question / discussion point on the list is, where would the region be based off of? And honestly, it's not really based off of anywhere in particular. I would say it might have some loose ties to Australia, but that's about it. Mostly just because Australia is a very, very neat location geologically. Some of the oldest rocks known are from Australia, especially fossil-based rocks, or fossil-containing rocks, dating back almost 3 billion years, which is absolutely insane for any rock to last that long. Rocks, in general, turn over very quickly and don't last that long. But also, just the landscapes and ecosystems within Australia are incredible. You've got basically deserts in the Australian outback. You've got lush rainforests and temperate regions. You have almost any kind of environment you can imagine is there in Australia, including things like coral reefs. It's got some really neat islands that you could go to, so, even though I know it's not part of Australia, but New Zealand is right there, which would make for a decent, like, post-game section area. Or Tasmania, which is part of Australia. Maybe being the spot where maybe the Elite Four is, or maybe even like a Battle Frontier. I don't know. Australia just, I feel like, has a lot you could do with it. Although, since Generation 8, I think most people are pretty sure it's going to be based off of the UK. The UK would also be very neat, because you get a lot of the same themes as Australia. It's not as diverse ecologically, but, you know, the same theme of islands where, you know, with the island that has Northern Ireland and Ireland on it, that could be the post-game island, whereas Wales, Scotland, and England could be the main body of the game. And England also has a very rich paleontological history, being where some of the first paleontologists, you know, were based out of and studied from. The third question in this series is, who would the regional professor be? And as much as I want it to be yours truly, as the Pokemon paleontologist, my last name is not a tree. So, I will be putting a lot of my personal traits into Professor Baobab, which is a kind of very large tree in Africa. I think it's very iconic. They're especially well known in Madagascar. But I think they're just really neat and really obscure looking trees, and I personally, they're one of my favorite trees. So I wanted to throw that in the game as well. He would be the Pokemon, as I stated, the Pokemon paleontologist, which is an area of Pokemon that I think has been very poorly explored thus far. Now, getting into a little bit of the mechanics of the game, question 4 is, which mechanics from former games would you bring into this game? And I think anybody who makes this video will be pretty obvious in that everyone loves following Pokemon. Getting to interact with them, getting to see them in the overworld like that, it's just fantastic. Like, everyone went wild when they had it in Generation 4 with Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and then when they revealed it was coming back in Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, everybody was ecstatic. But I want to take that a little bit farther in bringing back all the overworld encounter Pokemon. I don't think that it will, and nor do I want it to, be the same like capture mechanics as in Let's Go. I think that's something that's going to exclusively stay in the Let's Go series if they make more. Which I'm assuming that they will, because Let's Go did quite well. But just seeing the Pokemon in the overworld was so neat. It makes shiny hunting, in my opinion, a lot more fun, because I don't really have the patience for shiny hunting, but I actually quite enjoy it in Let's Go, because it's really not all that hard. Maybe that's just me not wanting to be a tryhard at it, but oh well, there's a lot more people streaming it on Twitch now, so that kind of says something. And sort of running off that, we have question number 5, which is, which mechanic would you upgrade / a new mechanic that you would add? And for me, I would add actual AI for the Pokemon in the overworld. They did a little bit of that with things like Abra, like how you can't approach Abra from the front, it will teleport away. I thought that was so neat, but I want to take that the next step farther. I want to see the wild Pokemon on the routes interact with each other. I want to see, you know, if there's a Pidgey and a Caterpie on a route, will the Pidgey start trying to attack the Caterpie? Because that's, you know, canon, at least, maybe not with Pidgey, but definitely with like Pidgeotto, or just general bird Pokemon trying to attack bug Pokemon. You know, they don't have to go into the detail of, you know, the bird Pokemon catching and eating it, but you could see like it trying to run away from the bird Pokemon. And just different interactions like that instead of just, you know, Pokemon 1 and Pokemon 2 just kind of doing their own thing and literally just walk right through each other. I thought that was like, I understand that you need it to be realistic and that it's probably a lot of work to code that kind of AI into a game, but I think it would just make for a whole nother aspect of playing the game. Because personally, I would sit on each route for hours. Hours. That is not an exaggeration. I would literally sit on each route, and I would document how each of the Pokemon interacted with each other, because I'm a nerd like that. That would be so much fun for me. And just building that kind of ecosystem interactions, I think, would just add so much more richness to the Pokemon universe. Question number 6, we have, who is the evil team? And I hadn't really gotten this far when I was making my game, I had the main bad person, but I hadn't come up with an evil team yet. So this one made me think a little bit. But the evil team is going to be called the Cypress Society. And if you know anything about trees, or I guess not anything, but if you were a tree connoisseur like myself, you'll know cypress is also a type of tree. So there is also a second professor in the region. But this professor is not what he seems. He is the ruler, the founder of the Cypress Society, who their goal is to revive fossil Pokemon with enhanced power, and to somehow use that technology to enhance the power of other really ancient Pokemon, such as Genesect and Pokemon like the Regis that are just confirmed to be very, very old. Now, mostly they would use things like rock and ground type Pokemon, or really any Pokemon that can use the move Ancient Power, just because that's sort of their focus. And actually looking through Cerebi, there's a lot more Pokemon that learn Ancient Power than I thought. Even just by level up. I knew there was a ton that got it by breeding, but, you know, I forgot that, like, Togepi and Togetic learn it by level up. And it's not just things like the fossil Pokemon. Like, there's a lot of really random Pokemon, like Kecleon learns it by level up for some reason. But I feel like having them focus on the super ancient Pokemon, and I know that term was kind of used in Oris a little bit, but the really just old Pokemon would be really, really neat. And that leads us into point 7, which is, in short, what is the overall story? So, to start off, you, your parents, and your sibling, who is whichever gender you don't choose at the beginning of the game, move into the town with Professor Baobab's lab, as per usual. But there's actually a little bit of layer to your parents because they are actually paleontologists as well, and the reason you're moving to this town is because your parents got hired to work in Professor Baobab's lab. As a result of that, your parents talked Professor Baobab into letting you take one of his freshly revived fossil Pokemon out into the world to see how it will interact, and basically being a field assistant while also, you know, completing the gym challenge and trying to, anyway, complete the Pokedex. However, there are not just 3 starter Pokemon, in fact, there are 6 in each game. Also, depending on which version you pick, you have different starter Pokemon. So in each game, you have 3 brand new Pokemon that are not the same between either of them. And then also, you can choose between 3 classic fossil Pokemon that are also different between the 2. So say in Calcite, you would have 3 brand new Pokemon, as well as maybe Kabuto, Archon, and Tortuga. Whereas in Aragonite / Dolomite, you would have 3 different brand new starter Pokemon. And then maybe Tyrunt, Amoris, or Amora, or Omanite. So depending on which version you pick, you have different starter Pokemon. And it's something that Pokemon's never done before, and I think it'd be something neat because it gives you an extra reason to pick one or the other. In addition to having altered stats, level up movesets, and evolution levels, all of these Pokemon will also have a brand new type, the Fossil type. Because the technology and science used to revive fossil Pokemon is getting better and better all the time, we're getting closer and closer to reviving them as they were when they were alive. See, there's a big theory around fossil Pokemon that I've always personally liked, which is, when they were alive, none of these Pokemon were actually rock type. That the process of being fossilized is what makes them rock type. So, as we're getting better and better technology, we're getting closer to seeing them as they once were, which is why, instead of having a rock type, they are now fossil type, which also influences their stats a little bit, which is why their stats are different, which is why their evolution level's different. So you and your sibling pick your starter Pokemon, and you head out on your own grand adventure. You start off the game like almost any other. You head off, try to challenge the first gym. Should you succeed, on your way back through to where the second gym is, you have to stop back through your hometown. But you are stopped before you get there by the mysterious Professor Cypress. He challenges you to a Pokemon battle and where he uses fossil Pokemon. But these are not normal fossil Pokemon like the ones you picked up as a starter. No. These Pokemon are in what's called their living form. And they're drastically different than the ones that you know. For example, He's got this Omanite, which is Water Dark type and a physical attacker, and this Kabuto, which is Water Bug type and is much, much faster than normal Kabuto. After your battle, he tells you to give Professor Baobab his best, and gives you a very rare fossil, and tells you to tell Professor Baobab that this will help him catch up in his research, and laughs as he walks away in a very mocking sort of way, as if he'll never catch up, because Professor Cypress's technology is so advanced that it already lets him revive these Pokemon as they were when they were alive. You go tell Professor Baobab about this turn of events, and he seems very surprised and upset, and tells you a little bit of the backstory between he and Professor Cypress. They used to be colleagues back in college, but now they're enemies. And why, you ask? Well, I guess we'll have to wait until a future video for that. And just to debate you just a little bit more, the last talking point is, what would the region's starters look like? And while I've talked about it a little bit, for the new starters, we'll have to pick up with those in a separate video as well, because I need a little bit more time to flesh out and maybe make some art for those new starter Pokemon. So that's going to wrap it up for this video. Let me know your thoughts on what you think Gen 8 should be, what you think Gen 8 shouldn't be, and just go through very briefly, answer these 8 talking points, and let me know if you could make your own personal 8th generation Pokemon, what would it be? Keep an eye out for those future videos, and also let me know your thoughts once the Generation 8 announcement drops tomorrow. Let me know your thoughts on that as well. And as always, there's a time and place for everything.